as you may or may not know, over the past couple of months, we have been hosting these video sessions where we basically take best practices that work in sales or marketing, and we help you guys apply them to your job search. Kayla is really great with outbound prospecting. She talks a lot about video. She talks a lot about like hitting quota and things like that. And the mechanics that go into that are really no different than how you should go about your job search and some of the things that you can be doing to kind of treat yourself as that enterprise product to get yourself to stand out and close the deal or get the job. What I would like,
Christine, congratulations.
Thanks.
Oh, cool. Nice. Okay, cool. What's really interesting, guys, and the reason why I left Andrea in here is the other thing that we realized as we were doing this is similar to how outbound prospecting, pitching and things of that nature help you get the job. When you're in the role and you're in your first year, especially in a time like this, it's really important that you hit the ground running and make yourself indispensable within the organization. So the next type of kind of session that we're going to start doing is where we work with leaders from sales, marketing, and customer success and actually start to figure out like what are principles that work in those areas that we can apply to your first 12 months. So I know, like, for example, Kayla, you probably have gone through this yourself, but like, you know, if you're in sales or even if you're in marketing going into your first role, like you want to make sure that you're like networking with the right people. Obviously your company is going to give you some training. They're going to guide you, but there are things that you can do to go above and beyond that leaders can help us. So half of this conversation would be with Kier, and we can chat about how things are going for you. What can we do to help you stand out? And Kayla can kind of take the lead, and then we can jump in with Christine, hear how your journey went, and then think about what you can do to kind of make yourself indispensable going forward. So Kier, why don't you bring us up to speed and tell us where you're at?
Perfect. Thanks for having me today, guys. I guess I'll start off with a little bit like background information, just general stuff. I'm from Raleigh, North Carolina. Been in New York City for 7 years. My path to my last role, which was an account executive role, was kind of non-traditional. I was a studio manager at SoulCycle, and then I was managing juice bars before that. And I landed at Flatiron School. So that role was an account executive role, but it was B2C. And unfortunately, I was laid off due to COVID. And so in my next role, I was looking to jump into the B2B world. And I had some trouble in the interview process, interviewing for account executive roles for B2B, like into the tech industry. Some of the feedback I got was I didn't have a lot of account executive experience or any B2B experience. So I've kind of changed my strategy and started applying to SDR roles at the tech companies, and that has actually worked very well. I went from kind of not having any interviews, like a few here or there, but to like multiple interviews, multiple companies. And so now it's like I'm in a really good position. So I'm looking to get into that SDR role, just prove that I can do the outbound prospecting, the activity goals, talk to like CEOs, CFOs, CIOs, whatever my persona is going to be at whatever company that I join. I just want to be able to prove that I can do it and get back on track to jump into another account executive role.
Awesome. Should I take it away? Okay. So I think you made the right choice. That was my thought was, hey, people want this experience. And so by having the SDR role, you're going into it and saying, hey, by also applying to those roles, you're saying, hey, I don't know everything, right? You're saying, I have this experience, I can bring this experience. I also think it's really important to talk to the people you're interviewing with and say, my goal is to become an AE. I've already been an AE. What does that path look like? So you're not setting yourself up for failure of saying a year down the line, they're like, oh yeah, well, I don't know if we have any open positions, but saying, hey, can we set a plan of success so that if I deliver on the goals for maybe like 1 or 2 quarters or whatever it is, there can be an agreement of my growth. And I think that will set you up for success rather than just jumping in and saying, I want to be an SDR, but really saying that my goal is this. And I think with the right company, they'll appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think that's like the main thing. And I think you're on the right track because people do want that experience. And a lot of times, even with like SDRs nowadays, when I started, I think 2 years ago, it wasn't necessarily about the experience. It was about the soft skills. But a lot of times now they're like, oh, we want you to already have been a BDR, but I think the fact that you've been in AE plays to that of you're like, I know how to prospect, I know how to outbound, I know how to reach out. So I think it's just about setting up a plan of success and then going from there.
No, that sounds good. And that's something that I know is important for me. I've already been an account executive. I want to be able to close deals. And so I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And I have to be clear about that while I'm interviewing, because that's something that I need. Definitely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great feedback. Thank you.
Just aligning expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And also I would say, like, obviously you can say, hey, I've done this, that, and the other. I have this experience. I think, and like admitting like, I don't know everything. Like I want to build a great like structure, build a great foundation, and then build on that. So honestly, it's not the end of the world to be an SDR because you won't have to be closing deals, which I know you want to, but like you get to learn the product. You get to really like put yourself in whatever company you're going to join. And then you get to say, hey, I have all this product knowledge that I've learned. I have already been having introductory conversations with my like ideal personas, or what we call ICPs.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can use that and say, hey, now I can be like, but make sure you have that plan, because a lot of companies will say like something agreed on or even in writing.
Mm-hmm.
I know that can get a little dicey.
Yeah, but you got to ask for what you want. And
Exactly.
make it clear.
Set the
Definitely.
expectations at least.
Yeah. So I think it's really about setting that up front, and you like the right place will say, yes, that's what we want. Like there are companies I'll be like, oh, I would also, as you are looking at SDR roles, see what plan for growth they have, because there's some SDR roles that are like, oh, if you don't hit quota every single month, we're not going to promote you. If you don't do this, that, the other, we're not going to promote you. And I know that's a lot of times there's turnover in the SDR world because of unreasonable metrics.
Yeah.
Make sure you're also the company that you're working for, to set yourself up for success, if you can, is finding a company that compensates SDRs on a way that makes sense. Like there are companies that, and my company has done this because I'm just on we're starting the second quarter, that we've had a SDR team, or BDR, whatever, same word.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, and the compensation just doesn't align. So it's making sure that there are knowing what you have to do to move the meeting forward, or whatever it is, or to like the compensation of SDRs. Like they'll say, oh, it's meetings, but it's like, okay, how many? I mean, it's the same question you would ask as an AE, like how many people are actually hitting their number?
Yeah, that's an important question I always ask, because I need to know if I'm joining like a successful team, and if it's not, if like the majority of people aren't hitting the quota, then the quota is probably unreasonable. So little things like that definitely are super important.
Exactly. And I think there's a piece about like what, especially in this remote world, like what support, because we have our SDR team started like right when the lockdown happened, and they threw in one, or SDR, BDR, whatever. They threw in one of our reps like 2 days after he started, being like, okay, now you're paired with your AEs and you have to go like do everything. But making sure that there is a plan of success to have a like remote, like what does your remote onboarding look like? I would say having that foundation to really grow. But I think the most important thing is setting expectations and saying, my goal is to be an AE. I have AE experience. If I do this or X and Y and Z, then we should is there an agreement that I will have this opportunity?
Definitely. Great advice. Yeah, love it.
I'd say like one of the things you have going for you, and this actually came up, I think, in the last Thursday night sales, an AE that is okay with prospecting, that is down to be an SDR, is like priceless in a sales organization. A lot of times if you hear from an AE, like, I would never want to do prospecting, I would never want to be an SDR, it's like, you're going to have a little bit of both. So you have that going for you, kind of what Kayla was mentioning. And the other thing is you'll get to know like the product, kind of like what Kayla's mentioning, like, and you'll get to know the people on the team so that when you do get into the AE role, it'll be a little bit smoother of a transition. And Kayla, I'm curious, like from your experience, or how you've seen it done other places, or maybe when you guys are hiring, what about reaching out to AEs or other SDRs to get context before like going into an interview? Would you recommend that?
I have not done that because I just followed my boss from my old company, but I definitely would. I would reach out to people on the teams who are actually like on the ground and say like, what do you think? What's the process? Like getting actual, that's your question, right? Like,
Yeah.
getting actual insight, because like I talked to someone a few weeks ago and he was like, well, do you feel like you're fairly, someone at a random company reached out to me and was like, do you feel like you're fairly compensated? And I'm like, I don't know where this is coming from, but obviously he doesn't feel like he's fairly compensated. So like the way that I like to think about it is, I think you make a great point. So there's like a triangle of happiness, and it's like people, money, and fulfilling work, or like emotional, whatever that can be, fulfilling work, feeling challenged, growth, like the emotional piece is a lot more. And so to be happy at a company and to be really fulfilled, all three of those pieces have to be met. There can be like some weight. So I would say, yes, go reach out to other AEs on the team. I would treat my job search exactly how I would treat outbound. So even though you don't have, and I don't know if there's any free like sales loft, or you could even use a spreadsheet and say, on this day, I'm doing this step. On this day, I'm doing this step. On this day, I'm doing this step. You want to show those leaders that you can like jump in and do the job. So I would also start reaching out to those people, start following them, start engaging with their content. And that's like, you're warming it up. And then when they interview you, they already are aware of who you are, right? So they're like, oh, I remember you like that. You commented on that. Also, make sure and I'm sure you're not doing this, but make sure your outreach is always personalized. So I'm not going to just say, hey, you're working at this company and I really want to work at this company. No, I'm going to say, hey, I did my research. I know that your company values this, and this is like why I align. Like you're selling basically you are a product. That's a really bad way to say it, but like you have to sell yourself so that they're like, oh, okay, we want you on your team. We know you. Like the most important thing is like personalization and hustle. Like start following people. Yeah, start connecting with account executives, SDRs, and ask them, say, hey, I'm applying. Can I get your honest like opinion on, and you may, and like that I haven't done that. And I wish I would have in some jobs, but like that can open up doors if someone's like, honestly, I'm not happy here. Or honestly, I don't feel like they pay enough. Or honestly, I don't feel like whatever the piece is, maybe there's not growth. So maybe someone in like management is saying, yeah, we'll have this growth path. And then you talk to an SDR and they're like, yeah, I've been an SDR for whatever, 2 years and they haven't moved me up. And that would give you insight of like, hey, this isn't the right place. I think it's also important, it's this weird balance of I want to get a role right now and I want a job, but then also of like, I want to find the right place to be where I will be happy, especially since we're all remote. Like it's especially important to be at some place or in your home, but in a role or a company that feels fulfilling and you know that there's growth.
One of the things that I had to kind of change about myself is I never was active on LinkedIn, and I don't feel like I'm as active as I should be, but I'm starting to learn more about like engagement on LinkedIn and get more comfortable doing that, because I never saw it as a necessity. And like, I'm not a brand. What's a personal brand? Like, that's not me. Like, I'm going to do the job. I'm going to perform. I didn't have LinkedIn for years, and finally I got one. And so now I'm sort of learning like how to make those connections, how to reach out to people and go against what I thought about LinkedIn and try to like change. And so that's how like I ended up here. I see things like this. I'm like, normally I would pass it by, like, I don't want to do that. But I was like, let me do that. Join Rev Genius, doing all these talks, like things I wouldn't normally do and getting outside of my comfort zone. So that's all great advice.
So you bring up a great point. Start posting on LinkedIn. Like, what have you learned about sales? Like, I try to post pretty short posts, but like, hey, do you like, there was a post that went kind of viral and it was like, hey, SDRs and I don't know, AEs about, it was something about like working together better. Start, because you have some free time, make sure that you're posting and you're posting about relevant sales stuff that you have experience with. Like, show your opinion, show your personality, and that will build trust. And you can say, if someone's like, well, do you have experience with this? You can say, look, I posted on LinkedIn about this. Like, I think you bring it, like, it brings up such a great point where it's like, start building your LinkedIn brand, start posting. Like, don't be afraid to post. I think that's the problem, is people are like, I don't know what to post, but like, what are you passionate about? Tell me, okay, so enlighten me. What are you passionate about?
What am I passionate, like work wise?
So that's the thing. Like, you're passionate about sales, right?
Yeah.
What
So
else
my thing about sales is hitting the goal. Like, I've always been motivated by goals, just like that aligns with me, my personality, my athletic background. So that's what it is about sales, like the drive, the motive, like having that motivation, like whatever it takes to hit the goal, the little small details that some people overlook, like I don't, all the activity goals, like small things like that, that I know I was good at in my last role.
So start writing about like how sports and sales are similar. Like, how it's like, I posted this video of me shooting hoops, and I was like, basketball has taught me this in my life that's similar to sales. Like, the cool thing about LinkedIn that people don't realize, it doesn't have to be 100% work. Like, I posted a video of me shotgunning an energy drink just to like prove a point about how I feel that LinkedIn shouldn't be serious, and like got a ton of engagement. So like, what I would do is, don't like overwhelm yourself. Start with like 2 days a week. Make sure that you don't post paragraphs. That's like,
no one wants to read that.
No, exactly how you like would write a like quick email, be concise, obviously have some content, and like write about sports. People want to be inspired, and that shows them also who you are. And if someone's looking at your LinkedIn and they're looking at your LinkedIn posts, they can be like, oh wow, like he overcame this challenge, or and that shows on a deeper level of, okay, like if there's a challenge, he can overcome it, rather than straight up asking you on the interview, oh, well, how did you
challenge?
Yeah. And you can even share it, like you have those stories in your back pocket. So like, I think it's just start with like 2 days a week. Hopefully that's not overwhelming. And then like start posting about sales. And I think that builds trust to say, oh, okay, he actually like has a personality. He actually is like knows about sales. So start posting even like tips, like share your tips. There's like nothing, like I try to share, if I get bad messaging, I'll be like, hey, here's a better way to do this. So I think sharing on LinkedIn and starting to post can be a really effective way to show, like, build your personal brand. Also, Morgan Ingram is like amazing at building his personal brand. So I would say follow him. He's someone who's like, I like think he's amazing. And then I would say also treat this interview process and this job search as you would outbound. So if you don't have a sales tool, build it in a spreadsheet. Say, this person from this company, on this day I'm going to do this, on this day I'm going to do this, on this day I'm going to do this. And then also, connect with like salespeople and SDRs and ask them questions about the company, because you could get in and the management sells you on it, and then you get there and you're like, this is nothing of what I thought. And then you have to put in all this effort again to find another role. So
that's something I definitely don't want to do. And it's really important when I'm interviewing to ask the right questions to make sure I'm putting myself in the right position. Because like, I've had opportunities that I've passed up, and it's because it's not the right fit for me, like my goals. So yeah, you have to be really clear with that, and don't settle. That's what I keep telling myself, don't settle.
I think,
Hi,
Yeah.
everyone. I'm Andrea. So apologies. I had a lot of technical difficulties attempting to join the Zoom today. So I'm actually on my phone, but I wanted to echo what you said about posting on LinkedIn. And it can really be about anything. I posted about how I did a 1,000-piece puzzle and I hated it, honestly. But every day I did a couple more pieces, and I related that to how every day in sales, if you do a little bit of work, ultimately it's going to pay off. And I would also say there are some free CRMs that you can use in your job search that enables you to organize a little bit more effectively than a spreadsheet. There's one that a lot of people have used, and I can't remember the name of it, but you can use a CRM to help automate some of those tasks. And anyway, I just wanted to say hi, hello, and I apologize for being late.
No worries.
But,
No worries. We all know it happens.
my
Yeah.
background, just a little bit about me. I just recently was made redundant due to COVID through, I was running a new business team for a trend forecasting company called WGSN. So I've been on the job hunt for about 2 months, but I had 3 offers this past week, and I declined 2, and I'm in the awaiting the employment offer, like the official offer letter after negotiating for a VP of sales role for a Series A startup called Social Standards.
Congratulations.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'd say, I missed the first 10 minutes, so I don't know what all of you guys talked
no
about
worries.
necessarily, but I know that for me, if I'm doing outbound for a job search, I think you hit it right on the head. When you're on a job search, you are the product that you're trying to sell 100%. And for me, it was not only reaching out to people within the companies that I was applying to, but also essentially creating a targeted list of companies that I wanted to work at, and then evaluating that against my relationships within LinkedIn and asking for ins, or, going to the manager or SVP or CRO or whoever was the most senior person at the company and shooting them a note and explaining about why I was interested in the company. And so I've had a lot of activity over the past 2 months, and I would say a lot of it is through my own personal outbound and leveraging my network, but I've had several inbound requests also, and that's because of what you were saying, building a brand on LinkedIn. So that's I just wanted to speak up and say hello and reiterate what Kayla was saying and a couple of different experiences that I've had.
That's
Yeah,
good.
absolutely.
One question I have, when you're reaching out to like the hiring managers or like the VPs and people you want to connect with, is the connection already established, or you're just cold outreach? Hey, this is who I am. This is what I have to offer. This is why I'm interested. Like, how does that look, that process of reaching out?
First, obviously, you want to see if you have any ins that are personal.
Mhm.
But if not, then do a cold message. And you want to focus just the same way you would if you were selling something. You want to focus on the value that you can provide. And it's a different approach if there's an open role that you're actually going after versus if you're trying to just build your network, right? And so I'm going to assume there's an open role that you found. And in that case, you can just really jump right in the message, because LinkedIn only gives you so many characters to use. So you can say, hi, notice you're hiring for this. I've done X, Y, Z, would love to connect and discuss how I can provide value, something like that. And it's a lot more direct. And you know what? The worst case scenario is they don't respond. And then you can still go after the internal recruiter and apply. But for me, actually just applying through a link or whatever, that's kind of my last resort. I want a personal in first.
Okay.
I would say also to that note, use video. Like if you can attach something also in the application as a last resort, create videos. Like how many people are sending videos to a hiring manager or whoever it is being like, hey, this is who I am, and that your personality shines. It not only does it show your personality, but it helps you get above the noise. right? So it's not just, you're not just like another message. You have to wait till they accept your request to have a, like Drift has a really good function where it has a preview of the video. So I would say use video, and you get 100 free videos on Drift, and then you pay like $12 a month. But I think like there is nothing better than video to catch someone's attention and differentiate yourself, because everyone else like is, like you said, is Andrea, right?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Like you said, everyone else is probably just like submitting an application, like cool, another application. But you send them a video, you do something different. Or like, what if they like poetry? Write them a poem. There was someone last week who I watched a presentation, and they had spoken at a conference, and the title of their presentation was 99 Problems, but Databricks and Spark ain't one. And I am horrible at rapping, but I wrote them a rap. And he was like, yes, I'll book a meeting. So like, how can you find these things? And that's not only like, find these, like, show why you're a fit for the company, but then also go into it of like, find their Twitter, find things like Google search them. Like people, for some reason, SDRs do not Google search, because I tell people this and they're like, oh, okay. Like I wasn't even people aren't even taught like the right way to SDR anyways, but go on Google, search them, see if they have a Twitter, see if they have an Instagram, see if they, whatever they have, and relate to them on that level. So there was like another lady also who had on her LinkedIn had a Dr. Seuss quote. I was like, I have to write her a poem. Like there is no, and she got back to me, she wasn't the right person, but like there is no other, if you can find those nuggets, weave it in. Like if someone says on their profile, hey, I like basketball, or you find it on Twitter, you can like send your video or your message, and then at the end be like, but either way, like at the end of the day, I love to talk basketball and my favorite team is whatever. So like tying it into personal so that you show that you actually care about them as a human.
And that translates into the role as an SDR anyway. It's the same exact thing as you were saying. It's something that I think far too few people do, is when you're talking about personalization, that there's so much information about most people out there. And yet I still get horrible cold emails that might as well have been written from a template about, even from some of the more technologically innovative sales enablement platforms. And that's because I'm in a campaign and I've got a cadence set. But when that first touch, especially the first touch, whether you're looking for a job or you're trying to get a meeting as an SDR, should be the one that has the most personalization, because it is the one that you build everything else off of.
So what I would say to that point is include a personalized, like if you connect with them on LinkedIn, like that's the most ideal. Your first thing should be a video and be like, hey, name, I know you're hiring. I created this video. It's less than 2 minutes, I promise. Set it off. I would also I like to start with video because like you said, it makes the most impact. It's the first thing that they remember. Then I would send them a personalized message. It could be something along the same lines, but like, hey, wanted to send you another message. I'm really interested in this role. I think I could be a great fit because of whatever, or I saw this, thought this was really interesting, or like some point of personalization. And then that if you can find that personalized piece, sending that. So like someone else who I reached out to last week, he has a really great LinkedIn profile. So that was like easy, but he had like random stuff of like very non-serious, but of like likes to samba to metal, goblin metal, and like submitted pictures to Farmers Only but got rejected, and like other stuff. And so I had a conversation with him. He had left his old company, and then I said, who's the right person on your team to take a meeting? He said, I am. And I said, okay, so what do I have to do to get a meeting with you? Is it send you like a Necro Goblin t-shirt, help you get a better photo for Farmers Only, or like he said he had 14 cats, so I was like, or send you a video of snoring cats. Like he was like, I'll take the meeting anyways. But like be creative and stand out, because no one else is sending this guy messages being like, would you like rather do this, that, the other, of like the most random things alive. People are just boring. Like don't be boring. That is like the overarching piece of advice is don't be boring and treat this job search like you would treat outbounding. Like it's exactly the same. You have a little bit more sway because it's a little less cold because they're actively looking for someone. Like most of the time when I'm outbounding to like CIOs or outbounding to VPs of data science, they're not actively looking for a tool. I just need to catch their attention. But the nice thing for that you have going is they're looking for someone. So it's like, you just need to stand out, get that first meeting, and then you can take the rest from there. It's just about getting their attention in that first meeting and standing out.
That sounds good.
That's amazing, man.
Yeah, the video thing, my first time hearing of sending a video was last week during one of the Rev Genius webinars. And I was like, well, that actually is good. As weird as it would be for me, when I heard it and the way that they kind of sold it, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. You have to separate yourself somehow, especially right now when there's so many people just like me looking for a job, the same job, but they're doing it the same way that I am. And I'm fortunate enough to get through the like applicant software, whatever that's called like ATS or whatever. I get through for most of the companies. Like my resume gets seen, but I could stand out, and going into the interview, I would be top of mind because they remember like, oh, that's the guy that had the video that we saw before the interview. So we already kind of know him.
And to that point with video also, after you have those interviews, send them videos. Like a little, instead of a thank you note, send them a video thank you of like, hey, name. If you, usually I like pretty much black out during interviews, but if you remember anything, do that. Or like, hey, it was great to meet you. Really enjoyed our time together. Looking forward to next steps. Like send those people in, like everyone, well, there's people who don't send a thank you, and then there's people who send a message thank you, and then video thank you I think is next level because not a lot of people are doing that. So it's like, how do they remember you? Let's say there's 3 candidates and you all have the same skills, but like you send them videos and you're like, thank you so much. That's going to stick out in their memory versus like, obviously a picture is worth 1,000 words or whatever it is, but like video is so impactful. And I know it seems like awkward and you're like, what am I doing? But also don't get caught up in it. Don't be like, oh,
no, you just got to do it. Just go for it.
I will say in all of the people that I've hired, I've never gotten a video thank you. So it would definitely make you stand out to me as a hiring manager. So I think it's great advice. And I would just say, be as cognizant about the background and make it short and snappy, but make it also like, even if it's on your iPhone, make your background look good, make the lighting good, things like that. Because otherwise, like, I'm going to be like honest, I would look at that as a hiring manager, but I think the overall message is the most important thing. And I think it's fantastic because I'm thinking back and I do keep track of who I get a thank you note from and who I don't. But a thank you note via video would be, as she said, next level.
Yeah, it works. And a lot of people are doing it and it is catching up, right? And at some point, hopefully more people will be sending these types of videos. So that's why the message obviously needs to be really good too. And every video will be unique because you're not like anybody else. There's a lot of awesome stuff that was said in there. There were so many notes in my head that I wanted to bring up, but and I actually a bit of a question, but Kayla actually answered it in terms of like the approach to outbounding. But Kier, what I would suggest, 3 very practical things that you can do is 1, go to Canva. I don't know if you've used it before.
Yeah, I've worked with that before.
Create a LinkedIn banner, right? Get the ugly kind of blue whatever off there. That's like step 1. Step 2 is connect with, like you have 286 or 284 connections. So you can't connect with like 100 people a day. You can probably connect with like 20 people a day. It's like based on the numbers, whatever. So I would connect with around 20 people a day, right? Whether it's like a direct person that's, hiring, or somebody at a company you want to work with, or everybody on this call, or everybody in Rev Genius. Like you have a huge network that you can tap into. You need to get that number to 500 plus.
Yeah.
Like, within 2 weeks, you could probably do that.
If you do connect too quickly, you will be in LinkedIn jail.
Yes.
I think they also base it off of how many connection requests you're sending each day. So let's say for example, I was at Looker and you may have a different opinion, but I was at Looker and I was sending like 200 connections a day, and then I dropped off, started sending again, and I was in LinkedIn jail. So I think it's also build up, and they open it up. They don't want to tell you that because they're like, LinkedIn, the way that LinkedIn thinks is you should only connect with people you know, which is the most BS thing alive.
Which is how I thought.
It's like email.
Prior to a few weeks ago, and now I'm realizing like, no, it's not like that's why it's been so low. I've just been connecting with people, and even like people I've worked with in the past, I never thought about like, oh, I should connect with them on LinkedIn. So now I've been actively finding people I've worked with, adding people from Rev Genius, and trying to get up to 500, because I was basically probably in June I was only at 190. So I'm steadily increasing, and I'm going to try to get that 500 plus.
So you bring up a great point. Connect with people who you've worked with. Ask them to write you reviews, because people will look at that. So say, I don't know, it's at the bottom of the page, say, hey, will you write me a review? Like you can even give them the structure. Like some people need some structure and be like, hey, you don't know what to write. Here's some structure about what we worked with, how we work together. Definitely get reviews. Like start connecting, like not like crazy, but start connecting and building that up. I am connected with probably 5,000 people I don't know. So like, it doesn't matter. Like it's about building your network. Also, as you start posting, you need more eyes on those posts to get engagement. So I would say definitely start connecting.
Got it.
It'll be relevant. Even though you don't know them, you know, you're not going to connect with like, at least at this point, probably won't connect with like random people that are like, you know, software engineers or this, like, you know, you could, but keep it relevant. And then a post a week will do it, even just to begin, right? I mean, obviously you can post a lot more. There's no right or wrong answer, but I think the key thing that Kayla said was just don't be scared. Everyone is scared. Everyone has imposter syndrome. Everyone is like, I don't really have much else to say that's different from everyone else. And who the hell is going to care what I post? Just post it. You know, don't even look at the likes. Don't look at the comments.
Just throw it out there.
Just post it. You know, you've done it before. You just have to apply it. It's essentially I steal this from Jake Dunlap all the time, but LinkedIn is the biggest networking event in the world, essentially. It's 24/7, right? So if you're not in there, you're just not at the event.
Yeah, I think I already know what I want my first post to be about. This is great because like I consider myself a really good writer, but I never write about work. Like I'm in school part-time, and so I'm like, yeah, I still have to write academic papers, so I still have my writing muscle working actively, so I can write something. I just never think about
everything you're saying right now could literally be a post. Like even what you said before, like I played sports and I love, this is why I do sales, like that's a post right there.
Yeah.
Or even break it down even further and say like this specific skill, or like you can break it down into many posts. Also, to that point, on LinkedIn, make sure that your LinkedIn profile is engaging. Like that's what I try to do. I really like emojis. I know there's different schools of thought, but like if you look at my profile, you're like, oh, okay, Kayla has some personality. Like you don't need to write paragraphs about yourself. I know people have different schools of thought, but give them some insight into like who you are as a person. And mine's like very straight up, so people can, like, I do it intentionally that way so people can digest it quickly of like, oh, I like working out when I'm not working and I like doing this, which also builds trust, because if someone says, oh, I actually like working out, subconsciously they're like, okay, we could relate.
Yeah.
So take
shows you're human.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Sorry, you're saying
I noticed the medals on your wall.
Yeah, that's what I noticed.
And so
whenever I do video interviews, it's always a thing, and I didn't think about that when I hung them there, but it always like starts a conversation.
Yeah, and you could relate a post to how you achieved that goal of attaining that medal.
Yeah.
Your sales career. You also mentioned earlier about being in B2C, and I think it's really relative right now to talk about the customer service side of things that sometimes the B2B people don't focus on. Not everyone, but a lot of people don't focus on that customer experience, that customer aspect. So you do have a very transferable skill in that B2C arena that you were in. So talk about that as well.
Yeah, that's huge, actually.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I would love to see more posts from you and others, just kind of similar to what we're doing here, but like, what can we take and learn from B2C that works in B2B? And like, what are some of your favorite moments from your career that you might be able to take into a SaaS role or an SDR role? Like, that's a really unique angle that not a lot of people can probably talk about.
Yeah, and these are things that I've been forced to think about because I have to explain it in my interview, why the transition. So I've already I have a bunch of notes about this and research.
Well, I'm going to steal it. I steal all of our hosts like gems because they're gems, and like, why am I going to reinvent the wheel? We had Alex Boyd on, and he literally said, get through the first interview on your LinkedIn, right? And Kayla mentioned it. I think Andrea mentioned it a little bit too. Like, that's when you'll start getting the inbound. It's like demand gen marketing, right? Like, you know, if you were doing this right, like if Kayla, for example, or not to put you on the spot, but if Morgan Ingram or Jake Dunlap was like, hey, LinkedIn, I need a job. Like, imagine how many messages they're going to get. I've never sat in a boardroom or in a pitch with Kayla. I've never gotten an email from her, I don't think. I've never seen her on the job, but she would get an interview, right? Like, she would get past all of that and like, oh, Kayla, yeah. Oh, Jake, of course. Boom, boom, boom. Like, you're getting that validation before you even get in. And like, you'll never have to feel this way again, you know? And like, it's not the type of thing that you want to be like, damn, now I need a job. Let me like start posting and it's going to take 3 months, 6 months.
Me.
You know, like, there's no point, you know? It's like, you're a B2B product at the end of the day. You know, we said it a couple of times. Companies don't just stop posting or marketing, you know, because they are done growing.
Yeah.
So why would we do the same thing as people? So let's switch gears because we have about 15 minutes left. Both Christine, I have like the hardest to pronounce name in the world. And I'm asking, is it Andrea or Andrea?
It's Andrea. Well, unless you're in London, and then it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Okay. So Andrea and Christine, so you guys just started a new role. Andrea's coming in as the VP. Christine, can you tell us a little bit more about what you're starting?
Sure. I actually start next Monday as business operations manager for a startup that's in their 16th month.
Okay,
so
awesome.
Very fresh.
So I would love if we can maybe have a little bit of a conversation. So like Kayla, for example, and Andrea can kind of jump in too, but what are some of the things that people can do, people in ops can do, people as VPs? Like, is there a difference? Like, what can you do when you get into a job for, you know, in your first year or even in your first 3 months that can increase your likelihood of success?
So I would say in this remote world, and I just started 4-5 months ago, I would say share what's working. So like, to build that trust in this remote world, that's what I do. I'm like, okay, something I'm doing is working. I'm going to share it with my team. I'm going to share it with the company. I'm going to share it. And I know it's a lot easier because I'm like creating these messages and sending them to prospects. So I'm like, look, they booked a meeting. But like, if you have stuff that's working, start sharing it, because that, I think on a bigger level in this world where we're not together, that builds trust. They're like, oh, okay, this person's making an impact. So I would say that's like my first thing. Let me think if there's anything.
I think the biggest thing that I look for when I'm hiring somebody in the first 3 months is I want to see passion. And so I want to see passion and a dedication to learning and curiosity. And it doesn't matter what you're selling or what role you are. You took this job because some aspect of it excited you. And I want to see that excitement palpable in my day-to-day, especially now that we're all working remotely. I think it's important to be able to talk about with your direct manager what their expectations for success are, because it's going to be different for an SDR versus an AE versus an account manager or sales ops person. And it's much easier for you to kind of benchmark yourself against success if you have a very clear expectation of what success looks like. Technically, that should have been talked about before you started the job, to be honest. But if it wasn't, then the earlier the better, because then you can kind of take a look at what you're doing and be able to work backwards. Like if you are an SDR and you know you have maybe, I don't know, a month onboarding ramp period, and that month too, you're going to be anticipating having to hit, I don't know, 30 meetings by the end of the month. What can you do in month 1 to really set you up to feel comfortable getting to that KPI in month 2, right? And this is sort of how I've built onboarding programs in the past. I think through what it would take to be successful in that role. And then I work backwards. And you can do that as a person who isn't, you know, in charge of your training. You can think about it. You can look at the most successful sales rep in your organization and say, what do they do that I can kind of copy in my process that will help make me successful? And it's really, I think that's part of the first 3 months too, is getting a really good sense of who at the organization you think is going to be helpful and starting to build relationships. Because you can't ever go back and redo a first impression. So you want to make sure that just as passionate and eager and curious, that you're also respectful of the other people who are giving you their time.
I would say also to that be about the relationship piece. And like, I'm just looking at it from just onboarding whatever a few months ago and getting hired remote, is like, put time on people's calendar and say like, hey, can we like just chat for 15 minutes? Not about like it doesn't have to be about work or anything, honestly, but just like, because we're probably going to be in this world for a while longer, building, like you said, Andrea, building those relationships early on can really help. So I would say like ask people if you can just even like 10 minutes, like that isn't a huge ask, and saying like, hey, I just want to get to know people. And you don't have to wait for someone to do that for you. Like a lot of companies are doing that now, like coffee chats and whatnot, but just doing that on your own also shows that you're like proactive and you're invested, and you'll learn a lot also by having those conversations of, hey, like, and it could be like half learning about the product, half learning about like the company, and then half about just like, who are you as a person? I want to get to know you. So you get like pieces of both of it, but also by like talking, the more people you talk to, like the more you'll sort of understand the product. And I don't know how technical your product is also. So like with me, I was like, I have no clue about data science, but I'm doing this. And so like my learning curve was huge, but talking to those people, just building those relationships in this world, because it's going to be a while longer. And so if you're like feeling isolated, that can be real. Like I already feel isolated just being at home. So if you can build these relationships and like talk to people and really grow within the company, I think that will make a difference.
Yeah, that brings up a good point. There's actually two kind of parts to what I want to ask, but in today's world, at least we've seen generally that like hiring managers are much more like strict about like, we really need this industry experience. We really need this like level or this whatever, right? Did you come across that, Kayla, like being that you didn't really have like the data science experience, or was that just not as relevant in your role?
It wasn't, well, I basically followed my old boss and I had hit quota 5 quarters. Right. He was like, okay, please.
Got it. So yeah, then it's just like the proof is in the pudding and you just hit your goals and like.
But I would say for like SDRs, it's a lot about just like the soft skills of like, can you work hard? Can you like learn on your own? Are you like not afraid to ask for help? Like just like soft skills that are helpful in any job. And that's what landed me my first role, was showing, I had no SDR experience, but showing that, oh, hey, I have these soft skills. I can work hard. I have actual concrete examples of how I have successfully done this, that, and the other. That landed me the role. It wasn't about any previous, like, who knows if it was about previous experience, but I hadn't had that exact experience. And so as an SDR, it was about, hey, what soft skills do I have? And I didn't even know that SDR was a role, by the way, before I became an SDR. But going in with the soft skills, that's what I would say is, it doesn't matter if you don't have previous experience. What matters is that you can work hard and show up, because like basically what an SDR is really just grinding. Like that's all it is all day. So,
and I would say to speak to that, it's about the story you tell. So if you're interviewing for a position in an industry that you don't have experience in, whether you have experience and just not in this segment, or whether, you know, you're starting out your career, how do you sell that you're going to be successful? And using examples. So if you're moving, you know, I used to work in entertainment and I moved into trend forecasting, whose primary buyer are the fashion, apparel, and retail segment. It didn't matter because it was all about the type of sales that I did and how I was planning to like coach and run with the team. But it does have to be something that you consider if you get past, not even if you get past that, if you're sending a message to somebody to try and connect, and they're going to look at your LinkedIn and you don't have the experience that they might want, address it, you know? And if you get to the point where you're having a conversation with them, absolutely relate to, okay, you know, so I understand you're in finance and I've worked in, I don't know, the public sector, but here's what I've done. Here's how I've taught myself to pivot to new areas and new industries. Find stories that support your why.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also in terms of telling stories, also that personalization, like you show your skills, like there's a piece of it also that if you show like as an SDR or you show that you're doing your research, you don't even have to tell that story because you have already shown that you are capable of doing that piece, right? So they're like, oh, well, are you good at doing research? You're like, I know that you this, that, and the other, like, I know this. So if there are ways in the interview that you can integrate pieces of the job, I mean, that's the thing is I feel like finding a job in a BDR role is like ideal because like you can show them exactly how you would work in the interview process or like pre-interview process. So like, it's just about changing who you are selling to and the way like you think about it a little bit and just like applying how you would be a BDR to, that's how like anyone, how I would say like interviewing and landing the role you want, you have to be a BDR because you're outbounding, you're doing research, you're reaching out to them. And it's like that top of the funnel. You just have to get in and then you like prove to them, but you have to make that first impression. And so I think essentially finding a job is like being a BDR. And a lot of people don't want to start at the beginning. So
BDR is one of the hardest jobs, but it's also will teach you a lot about yourself and others. It's one of the hardest forms of like communication that you can do is like trying to persuade someone to give you their time when they have no idea who you are and they probably got 50 other messages that day asking them for the same thing. It's like one of the hardest things that you can possibly do. So learn it. Easier said than done.
I did try to avoid it. Because I knew about it. We had SDRs at Flatiron. And so I only applied to account executive roles. I was like, I want to go from account executive to account executive, but the B2C thing was a problem. So I was like, okay, let me do it, suck it up. I know I could do it. And I knew it was going to be a grind. So I just had to be prepared for that grind.
I wouldn't even I would kind of like acknowledge and defer. Like it's a thing, but it's not like that big of a thing because there's a lot of transferable skills. There's a lot of experiences that you've had. And there's a lot of positive things like Christine mentioned that can actually be used to your advantage. So I would just reframe that, you know, it's not like, oh man, I don't have this. It's like, no, actually I have a unique advantage because I have this experience and I am able to do this and that. And if you find the right organization, it'll match. So we have 3 minutes. I wanted to ask a question. I wonder if we can answer it in 3 minutes, maybe. But Kayla, so you're doing a lot, right? So you have your personal stuff. You just started a new role. You are posting on LinkedIn. You have your everyday job. How do we prioritize on a daily basis? Like you just got into a new role. Like how do you not stop posting and stop like ignoring everything else basically?
So it's all about calendar blocks. Like set calendar blocks on your time, set calendar blocks for specific activities and stick to them. So if you are currently searching for a job, you're going to say at this time to this time, I'm just searching for roles. At this time to this time, I'm actually reaching out from people or I'm doing research on who's actually hiring, who are the actual people who would be my manager. Like I'm going to obviously reach out to them. And then I would set those. Like it's all about just setting time blocks on your calendar saying, hey, on one, or even starting with once a week posting on Wednesday, on like Tuesday night, I formulate my post so it's ready to go on Wednesday morning. I think that's like pre-planning. That's the thing is we struggle because we're like, oh, I need a post today. And then you're like, oh, I don't know what I need to post about. So setting something on your calendar the night before, setting half an hour aside and saying, I'm going to go research or I'm going to formulate my post, and then you post on the next day. So you're not having to stress in the morning and being like, oh, it's also don't post late in the day is my other advice. Post usually in the morning. I think it gets more engagement.
Love it.
Yeah.
Cool. So thank you guys so much for jumping in. Would love to obviously have all of you back. This was a great conversation. Thank you so much, Kayla, for taking your time out, and the rest of you for jumping in, going outside your comfort zone a little bit. Congratulations, Christine and Andrea. Kier, you're going to kill it, man. We look forward to hearing about where you land. I'll follow up with all of you guys over email and kind of take next steps, and look out for the videos.
Perfect. Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sounds great.
Amazing.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a great day, guys. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.